Good day, and welcome back. We are looking now at the back of the Commodore 4016-N, made for 117 volts, 1 amp, 60 hertz. Serial number C3002397, which probably means it's serial number 2397. Made in the USA. And why are we here? Well, we're just looking at the back. Of course, there's a variety of stickers and warnings, especially on the monitor. But there are good reason to be warning people about the monitor, because there is a lot of high voltage in there. So, what am I doing? But I'm going to have a look at this. Well, not this exactly, but what's inside here. This is the fuse, or the fuse holder, and if you take a regular slotted screwdriver of the appropriate size and turn this, this will come out. It will. And, I mean, the best way to check a fuse, but any fuse that I've ever seen in one of these things, if it's blown, you can tell just by looking at it. Just a moment while I hold this up to the light and take it out. And from what I can see, here's the fuse holder, and here, there was the fuse. You know these things are round, and they roll. Okay, so there, I'll just leave the screwdriver there. There's the fuse and the fuse holder. And from what I see, the fuse looks fine. Does this mean it is fine? No, not really, but usually, from what I remember, let's see, for continued protection against fire, replace only with the same type and rating of fuse. From what I remember of the fuses in the PET, I think they were the kind, I think they called them slow blow, which means they would not initially just on some little anything just pop. They would sort of be a little more forgiving. And certainly the element inside of this looks fairly thick and substantial, which believes me to think it is a slow blow. So, once you have checked the fuse, and you have kept it from rolling away, it just has, when I'm looking back into, there's a spring in here, so all you really have to do is put this back in, take your screwdriver, push it ever so gently, and give it a little turn, and shaboom, the fuse is back in. So, as I said before, this is a pretty fine looking machine. It is, I guess the case is kind of that ceramic-y stuff that they used. Excuse me. Funny, I see here, I don't know if you can see this, I think you can, yeah, there's a wire. Why is that wire there? It should not be in front of the port. It should not. Also seems to be a screw missing here. What does that mean? I don't know. Is it significant? Probably not. This is, of course, is where you would take a power cord and plug it in, a standard, you know, 3-prong thing. It's funny, you know, I've seen people with ads up on, like Kijiji and other things, saying that they've got like a 1541 or other, I think it was mostly 1541, saying, no power cable, I can't test. Well, really, the power cable required to plug into this, and most anything that Commodore ever made that I can think of that had a removable plug, is really just a standard issue plug. You can probably take it off something else you have, or if all else fails, go to a second-hand store and pick one up for not much of anything. But anyway, so I would write to these people and say, you know, it really doesn't take some magical power supply and some, you know, special magical thing to test this thing out. You just need to get a power cord, a regular typical thing, and plug it in. So that is where it would do it. This is, of course, the power switch in this position. It is off. In that position, it is on, where you can see the little white dot, which means I'm on. But there's no power cord plugged in, so of course we're not really doing this at this time. What else? At this second, I'm just trying to think. These ports, there are two, well there's three. There's a cassette port at the far end for a cassette drive. There are other ports on the back of these machines. One is the IEEE port, and one is the user port. And the user port is one that you can do things with if you are so inclined. I'm just looking way in the back. I'm looking at the back of the 8296 because at this moment I don't remember if this is, I think this is the IEEE port, and that would be the one that you take a cable of the IEEE variety, which are still rare, well, not rare, but they're expensive. That was the one downside of all of this, is the cables to hook up, relatively speaking, were pricey. But they were good. So here is, I have in my hand an IEEE cable. And how do I know which side is up? Because it says Commodore on the side that's up. So this cable, and funny, there are little notches in here and here. And they are supposed to make sure that you never plug in something you're not supposed to plug into. And there are supposed to be corresponding plastic inserts in the end of all the IEEE cables to make sure that 2 pins down on the left and 3 pins down on the right, that there are these inserts, and it means that you always put the cable in the right way and you never put it on the user port. Well, of course, those plastic things don't last. The cable seems to last. So here is an IEEE cable, and if you were going to hook it up to disk drives and things, you would put it on there. And you would be ready to connect. Funny, as I did that, I did see, yes, the circuit board has much movement in there, because it really doesn't have, it has little plastic feet in the front, but I don't think it has any screws towards the back. But we're not plugging it in now, so it doesn't matter. So there is the PET end of an IEEE cable. Note, on one side it says Commodore, and the other side it does not. And really, these were the cables that were the most unique of all, because the other end looked like this. And they would only fit on one way because they are shaped kind of like a D. And look, the Commodore logo is on both sides. Anyway, so you would take your PET to IEEE cable, such as this one, which is trying to fall off the table. Yes, it is trying to fall off the table. Anyway, you would take your PET to IEEE cable, you would connect it to your PET, and then from there you would daisy chain along, and typically the first thing you would have would be a disk drive. The next thing might be a printer, and yes, even at times, there was an IEEE modem. There was. The 8010. So, a typical setup at home for, you know, just somebody starting off might be something like this, a 4016 hook up to a 4040. And I don't know how many people use printers these days. I don't use them that much. But the 8023 printer I had on the go the other day, that might be something that someone would still have today. They also made the 4022 and the 4023, and And actually, somewhere, I have to find it, I have an old original PET, I think it's a 2023 printer, which is loud and noisy, but last time I checked it, it still works. So, anyway, this cable is the kind that would go onto the PET, and to daisy chain along, you have cables that have two ends like this. And if you see, there are little screws in here. So you would take this, oh, don't run away. You would take this and hook it onto your, say, disk drive, and then screw it in, because there are places to screw it in. It's good to be tight and secure. And then you would take another one and you would put it on there, and then that cable would screw into these things. And typically that's as much as it went if you just had a machine with a disk drive and a printer. But you might have a modem, and it's possible, like when we ran the various bulletin boards we had, we would have different disk drives with different device numbers. So the main board ran off device 8, and then other things, probably things that people could download, would be off device 9 or 10 or 11. So that too would be more cables. What I always found was it was best if you hook this to your disk drive and then you put another one on the back of that, but then the best thing was not to have like 4 or 5 of these all plugged in together on the back of one machine, but yes, the cable doesn't even like the idea of that. It just fell on the floor. Anyway, but would be to go from the PET to the disk drive, and then go from the disk drive to the printer, or if there was more than one disk drive, especially having them maybe stacked up, go from one disk drive to another, to another, to another. And, you know, if there was a modem, get in there somewhere. But just try to have 2 of them plugged in together rather than 5 or 6. Found they worked much better that way. Anyway, so enough. This machine is not on, but I'm going to turn this off, so in case I was to plug power in, that I can control when it is that I turn it on. Because I certainly, if there is something bad, I don't want to be in the midst of reaching around or doing something and then see the mushroom cloud appear out of the back or the top, or the, like when the 8050, the smoke sort of wafted through the vent holes and things. Alright, enough of this Fat 40. Stay tuned. We will do more of this. Bye for now. Thank you very much for coming.